died, he said to some of his friends that he hid something in the fortress.
Yes. I found it. This is the glasses. The Russian soldiers, they approached from all around. After the battle, they found 150 dead Russians in the ditch here and 70 wounded.
Przemyśl, an amazing historic city on the River San in southeastern Poland. It has for centuries been a gateway between the Carpathians and the plains of Central Europe. It is one of my most favored places. I would consider living here, and not just because of the beautiful architecture or the great food, but because its history, its location, it gave it immense strategic importance through the centuries. And in the late 19th century, the Austro-Hungarian Empire transformed it into one of the largest fortified towns in Europe, with over 44 forts surrounding the city. By 1914, Przemyśl fortress stretched in a wide ring of forts, ramparts, and artillery positions interconnected, designed to anchor the empire's defenses in Galicia and to control their approaches into Hungary and Krakow. Przemyśl fortress was the third largest in Europe, under the command of Hermann Kuszmanek, a military bureaucrat, but competent nonetheless. With 44 small and large forts constructed, the older forts had received an outer ring around it totaling 45 kilometers of defenses, with 956 guns in place. Many of them were older field guns, however. The garrison was of 85,000 men, but eventually that would rise to 120,000. Also, the Germans had lent the Austro-Hungarians a battery of heavy 300mm howitzers, but munition to these were low even before the first siege, and they were never able to lend their full potential into the defensive battles. When the First World War began, the fortress became the focus of some of the most dramatic fighting on the Eastern Front. In September 1914, Russian forces, having routed the Austro-Hungarian forces from the city of Lviv further east, relentlessly forced 100,000 Austro-Hungarian soldiers to flee their unattainable positions there. For the citizens and soldiers in Przemyśl, the first sign of war was tens of thousands of ragged, hungry soldiers streaming through the city in panic, fleeing the Cossacks and Russian soldiers alike. They were halted now in the city to refit, awaiting German relief. But soon the Russian forces was upon them, surrounding the city, laying siege to it. The Russians, under command of Alexei Brusilikov, were in a hurry to take the city and move on into Galicia and to the German territories quickly before the Germans could mobilize fully in the east. So after days of fierce shelling and taking of outposts, they charged the outer forts, starting with the famous Fort 1-1, now located in no man's land in today's Ukraine, right on the border. I will take you there, having been granted special permission to do so, and talk you through the battle where it took place. But soon after the battle began, the Russians were routed by relief forces in 1914, and the fortress held for now. But they would be back in the winter of 1914, and this time they had time, and they initiated what would become the longest siege of the war in Europe. For months, the Austro-Hungarian garrison, numbering well over 100,000 men, endured bombardments, shortages, and desperate sorties. On the 22nd of March 1915, with food and ammunition exhausted, the last horses had been eaten, the starved soldiers issued the last rations and was sent on one last ill-fated breakout attempt towards the east. That winter, previous relief attempts had failed. They even had a train improvisationally armed, but it failed to clear the tracks. This was the last breakout attempt, and it failed. Most of the starving men could not even make it to the jump-off points. Still, there was fierce fighting. The men had been promised a food store in the east could be captured, yet most must have known this was a fantasy. Kuszmanek had felt he had to try one last effort as to show a face, before the inevitable surrender, yet they died for nothing. Negotiating the terms, the defenders' 𝐾𝐨𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐼's last orders was to fire all guns in all directions, and once they fell silent, all defensive works were to be blown up one by one and destroyed before surrendering in an attacked fortress. More than 120,000 soldiers was then taken prisoner, and the loss of Przemyśl was a severe blow to the Habsburg morale and the power in Galicia. Przemyśl was so important even the Tsar himself would visit, and the Russians did begin repairs of some of the forts that they would be able to fight from these when the Germans inevitably would come to relieve the city, which they did in June 1915, and with a vengeance, and heavy howitzers, able to destroy even the old forts, upgrades included, further destroying the forts around town. These were the views of the old forts the Germans found as they re-entered town. Many of the battered forts had been destroyed extensively from the battles and sieges. Yet one cannon in a steel dome was found intact enough to fire after the retreating Russians. And from there, none were restored again and put back into use. And one would think this was the military end for Przemyśl. However, in an interesting twist of events, after 1939, several Molotov bunkers were constructed inside the old forts. I will take you through some of these later. But it is most interesting how the sites of much older fortifications were repurposed in such ways. But the sieges and wars left a lasting mark on the city and the surroundings and the countryside. The forts, the cemeteries, and memorials still visible today. Everything was a battlefield or part of the fortress. Now, Przemyśl's frontier role did not end with the Great War. In September 1939, as Germany invaded Poland, the city again became a battlefield. After initial fighting, Przemyśl was divided along the San River under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The Germans controlled the western bank, and the Soviets, having invaded Poland from the east, sat on the eastern bank. For 2 years, both occupiers now constructed fortifications. Many Molotov-lined bunkers were constructed, many of them in the old forts and its ruins. And on the other side, Germans constructed bunkers of their own. Then, in June 1941, the launch of Operation Barbarossa brought the Germans across the river into the Soviet-held sector. By 28 June 1941, the city was fully under German control and would remain that way for years. But many of the old buildings had been damaged and destroyed. Today, Przemyśl stands as both a vibrant cultural center and a city of remembrance. Its preserved forts and earthworks testify to its role as the Austro-Hungarian's eastern shield, while cemeteries, museums commemorate the tens of thousands who suffered in the sieges of the First World War and in memory of the 1939-41. When the city was torn between two occupiers, that also remained central to its identity. To visit Przemyśl is to walk a landscape where geography, empire, and war have left indelible marks, making it one of the most historical significant towns in Central Europe. I will begin our journey at one of the most difficult forts to visit, Fort 1-1 in Ukraine, a place most have never seen, as no one is allowed to visit it. Then we'll begin to explore the remains of the fortresses and bunkers of both wars, and I can only say, I hope the journey I will take you through in this amazing place will do its justice, and that I can cover most of the important stories and locations of those battles, and do honor to those who fought and died here.
This is the landscape. The outer landscape that was occupied by the Russians, who had surrounded Fortress Przemyśl in 1914 and were about to attack in October. Through this landscape, and the first fort they're going to hit is fort number 1-1. It has taken me a long time to get permission to go visit 1-1. I have driven through the small villages here, finally had to abandon my rental car, and now it's on foot. The border patrol is informed because this is no man's land. Poland is right over there, but still, it's a country at war, and you never know. So I have crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's to show you something that there's practically no photos of, most people have never seen, and anybody who does a video on the Battle of Przemyśl, they don't come here. And guess what? I can come here to the 6 outer forts for the next year. But we're going to start right in the place where the battle started. The border, as you can just imagine, this beautiful landscape. The Russians got here. It was on the heels of a fleeing and defeated army. An Austro-Hungarian army, the garrison in Lviv had been defeated. They fled disorderly, ragged, lost their weapons, no shoes, in those cold autumn months into Przemyśl. And now the Russians had finally come in and closed the ring early in October around the fortress of Przemyśl. And we all knew, with the hundreds of thousands of men inside, it was only a matter of time. Of course, there was a hope that the Russians were not going to attack, but just lay siege. This was the beginning of World War I. Everything was still new, but the Austrian guns were older, and the Russian guns were newer, but really couldn't do much damage to the heavy forts. That I cannot wait. The story of this battle, you won't believe it. I can't wait to tell you from the place where it happened. It's in there. Some 100 meters in there. So this is where the fun will begin. Making a path. Jesus. And I'm already soaked. All these forts are surrounded by thorny bushes. That's for 2 reasons. It's deliberate. When they were built, they put all these thorny bushes in because of the root network to hold the dirt, and because they're thorny as hell, so nature's barbed wire. Now, this distinctly looks man-made, doesn't it? I think I've come to one of the wings of the fort here that then wraps around, and the glass is up front. Come on, little fort. Damn it, where are you? Yes, gun position. Yeah, it's one of the open gun pits. Yes. I found it. This is the glasses. This is the one. The Russian soldiers, they approached from all around. Oh, I can see another dip over there. Oh, it's gonna see how much bigger this is. I honestly don't know exactly how big it is, because being out of fort, I thought it was just a smaller supporting position to protect the bigger fort behind Fort 1. So it's just the mist from the hot day and the wet forest floor. But you look at this. Now you imagine backlit by projectors and explosions, fire from cannons and impacts. That's what it was like here, because the Russians actually backlit their soldiers with a projector. I'm on top of the fort. Don't know what this is. Trench led to it. There she is. Yes, there she is. This was apparently also demolished. I'm standing inside the casemate, and before the fortress surrendered a year later. Apparently, see cement reinforcement. Now, I have to find the center of the fort, and we'll have to find out where the domes were placed. Which could have been here, because these are rounded stone blocks. And here's one round. Yes, this is round. This is where one of the cannon turrets were. Oh, wow, this is well exploded. Oh, there's piece up there as well. Right here. Knowing the Russians were overrunning the fort, loaded with grape shot, swung the turrets around and blasted the Russians in the ditch. But these were the stones in the gun pits. So there's more gun pits. There's 4 or 6, from what I understand. We'll see if we can find the others, and we'll just pray they're not all this destroyed. I can't believe this is so destroyed. But look at the ditch. This was by the Austro-Hungarians after this battle. This was absolutely made one of the most famous places for their heroic stand. And the commander as well made famous because he held out, even wounded. I think this is the center, this is the 𝐾𝐿. Oh my God. It looked like it's completely collapsed. That means that on the other side of that hill should be a fort, and the glasses in the ditch is down here. In here, dead Russians strewn everywhere. Yeah, this is the back. Oh, what is this? This is the back of it. Oh, the reinforcement. Wow. Look at that triangular shape. That is interesting. A triangular roof. There's another part of it. If this place could talk, a story it would tell. I guess the place can't talk, so I'll have to tell the story as best as I can. Alright, what happened here? In October, initially, the whole Przemyśl fortress of all the little fortresses were surrounded by the Russians. Then on the 7th, it was time for the Russians to attack. Their attack went off a little late. The first point they were going to attack was here, Fort 1-1, one of the forward forts, which is quite a lot bigger than I actually thought it was. It was manned by Landsturm, a Hungarian Landsturm units, some 140 people. And they were all middle-aged guys. They were all in their 40s because they were too old for field duty. But 𝐾𝐨𝐳 thought they could at least hold and defend. And despite the fact that they were from 16 different regions that didn't even speak the same language as many of them, they could hold and they could defend, and they did hold and defend. At night, at 3 a.m, they heard noises they couldn't identify. They had been repairing the barbed wire. Out here on the glacis, all of this was barbed wire all the way down. The Russians were down here, and sappers were making their way up onto the glacis. There was a searchlight. Of course, the fort had been under artillery fire by the Russian guns, which could outrange the Austrian guns because they were newer. The Austrians had 4 steel-domed turrets here, guns, and field artillery. And also there was infantry units. That was the Landsturm unit. They were the infantry sitting inside all the gun ports. Now, as the sappers made their way up, the searchlight of the fort had been destroyed, so they couldn't see. But they were somewhat okay because they knew there was listening posts out front. And one of the listening posts, he just managed to get one rifle shot off by accident before his throat was cut as he was overrun. That woke up the fort. The fortress commander, he said, fine, let's fire some flares. They fired flares and found the Russians right here on the glacis, right in front of the ditch. Right here's the 𝐾𝐿. Now the battle began. The sappers had crept up. They had bolt cutters, 32 grenades, that's all they were given the unit. They also had gun cotton because the artillery couldn't destroy the fort, so they were going to use gun cotton to drop in the chimneys and blow up the forts that way. But first, they had to get onto the fort. Here, they're on the outside, stuck with the barbed wire, being shot at by the infantry. The cannons hadn't opened fire, don't know why yet. The Russians eventually managed, after a 2-hour firefight, 2 of the fort's machine guns were taken out. They managed to put a ladder across the ditch. They get onto the fort proper. The commander of the fort is screaming frantically at the artillery commander why he is not firing on these people. The artillery commander had a nervous breakdown. He's huddled in the center of the fort, shaking. The infantry is doing their best to fire. Hours of battle, the cannoneers decided, well, on their own initiative, regardless of what's going on with the commander, to open fire. They loaded the guns with grape shot and started taking their toll on the Russians. But by that time, the Russians had already made it onto the top of the fortress. Now, they may have taken down the ladders and were able to stop more Russians coming onto the fort. Hundreds of Russians were now on top of the fort. The infantry and the artillerists in the open air were pulled on the orders of the commander into the fort, where they shut themselves in, shut the heavy steel doors. The commander himself was wounded as he was carried later, had to bang on the door. His comrades carried him into the fort. From there on is where the fight stood. Now the Russians were in control of the top of the fort, but they couldn't get into it because everything was shut. Rear firing to positions I hope we can get to. Now, all the Austrians could do is sit and wait for reinforcements, which finally came at 7 a.m. Here in the distance, finally the Russians on top of the fort, they saw the Habsburg army come to relieve them. The Habsburg also saw Russians on top of the fort. The Russians saw the relieving army, and at that point, everybody started shelling the fort, and all the Russians outside were scrambling to try to get in somewhere, banging on the doors to the fortress to beg themselves to be let in, because both the Austrians and Russians were firing on the fort, killing everything. Eventually, the Russians were let in and surrendered into the fort. 150 prisoners were taken, and 2 Russian commanders committed suicide. A little extreme, but they did. This was amazing heroics, and the Russians had set up a machine gun on top of the fort to fight off anybody approaching for rescue. That was made short work of by the Habsburg guns. Imagine you sit inside this fortress and you hear being pummelled for days. After the Russians closed the ring, they were pummelled for days by Russian artillery. The artillery couldn't really get in, but you're sitting inside a tube being banged on by a very large hammer. And finally, one night, the Russians came and the fight was on. And at the end of the day, they emerged victorious. And I actually don't know what happened to the artillery commander who had a nervous breakdown. But this was 1914. Happened 1915 is a different story. After the battle, they found 150 dead Russians in the ditch here and 70 wounded. As the Russians attacked up the glasses, the Russians turned on a powerful searchlight, backlighting all their soldiers, of course, and the fort was covered in smoke. So now the Russian soldiers can see smoke that's lit up in front of them. They can't actually see the fortress. But the Austrians can see the Russian soldiers lit up by their own searchlight and took heavy toll on them as well. You look at how serene and quiet it is today. This beautiful place. Just imagine it. Everywhere here, there's just explosions and death and gunfire and machine guns and cannons and heroics. And as you've noticed of me crawling through the fort, it was fairly wet. They attacked in October. I'm here in September, not far from October. It's a pretty wet day. So when the Russian sappers got to the top of the roof, they tried to light the gun cotton, toss it down the chimneys, but it got wet, so it didn't work, and it didn't explode. Fortunate for the Austro-Hungarians inside. What a battle. We can come out to the front. Fortunately, despite how destroyed this fort is, many of the others have been... There's over 35 forts around this city of Przemyśl. They've all been blown up, so they wouldn't be captured in 1915. However, they've all been blown up, a little different, all of them. So, I visited all of them. So, together, I can show you one complete fort. But they're amazing. Here's the destroyed tunnel running through the fort from the center. So this is the center of the fort here. When you see rubble and destruction of a fortress like this, and you know exactly what happened here, you look at it different. It's not just stones. It's steel where men fought and died, and they had a hell of a story. Imagine the Russians attacking this fort, overrunning it, sitting on top, being seemingly in charge, only to be the ones who actually end up surrendering. This is what's left of the back wall. This was completely demolished. That is very, very sad. Very sad indeed. There's the ditch. And the front line through those trees.
Upon diving deeper into the fort, I discovered there was only one armored battery on the left shoulder, where I found the remains consisting of 2 racing turrets and 1 observation dome. The guns were 8cm M2 St. constructed during the last upgrade in 1901. But it appears there were also 2 encased M84 Minimalschallkanonen M98 in armored casemates. There was a large caserne, of course, but the design here was very elaborate with the earthworks and hard to discern in the growth. Also here were 8 8mm Škoda Schwarzlose M93 machine guns, and the fort was supported by 2 artillery batteries of 20 guns located in 4 gun stations. Having visited Fort 11, and granted, there was not much to see, but we had to see it. So together with a good friend of mine, a historian, we will take you through some of the most important key fortresses here.
All right, we're heading out to the main fort here to the east, the fort furthest to the east, short of the little ring of forts surrounding which is currently in Ukraine. Those we're going to have a look at, because that was the first ones that the Russians hit in 1914. But this one has something very special that's only here in existence. The dovetailed entrance. Ditch all around, artillery on the top of the ramparts here. And we're gonna have a look here at the entrance. This is very nice. So this is what's called a dovetail, because it sort of have that shape. It has problems though. And a little diamond ditch, I suppose. The ramparts are enormous. The ditches here are just very, very large.
So 100 years over has passed since the beginning of the ending, of the First World War, and the fortress still show us the mysteries. 5 years ago, when we started making the renovation of the main gate, we have found the original iron gates in this little beneath this bridge. It was right there. The original iron gate was inside of the moat. Yeah, and we making renovation of this gate. They're gonna put it here in probably when they open.
Could you actually salvage the metal?
Yeah.
So why is it so important to restore this very gate?
Because it's the only gate that exists in all of the forts. It was called the Swallowtail, and we're gonna keep it for future.
This was actually a tactical problem, wasn't it?
That was a tactical problem, yes, because if that gate would collapse, there was no entrance from the fort. You know, you couldn't run from the fort. That's why all of the gates been destroyed, and only one has survived on fort number 1 that we are right here. When the fortress was blown up, after the ending of the second siege in March 1915, all of the buildings has cracked in a straight line. You can see it right here.
Because they didn't know at the time.
They didn't know when you mix in the concrete, you don't have too much time to use it.
It has to be poured at the same time to harden together.
Yep. We can laugh about it because that was completely something new for them at the 19th century, now the concrete.
Well, they didn't know, and then you learn hard lessons in wartime.
Yeah, and what you have to know, there was no electricity in the forts. You see, the lamp was holding over there.
That was an actual lamp.
Yeah.
Kerosene lamp with a
Kerosene
fire.
lamp, yeah.
The Russians were going to take the town. They'd been under siege for months. There was no food, there was nothing. Nobody was coming to their rescue. They tried. They were going to have to let it go, and he couldn't surrender it intact, because then the Russians could just ensconce themselves for the next relief attempt, which happened, and the Germans came to the Austrians' aid and kicked them out of here. So they blew them up. And it counts from civilians that sat in town while 37 forts in a ring around town just blew up one by one by one. Thunderous. Must have been something. And the damage we really see is from that destruction. That's heartbreaking. It must be heartbreaking for a commander of a fortress like this to give the order to destroy it, to self-destruct. And this was a top modern fortress with kitchens, sanitary, barracks, everything. Those almost 500 men here. in this fort. But you look at this.
The main yard, and what you have to know, those buildings, they've been built by Austro-Hungarians, and as a nation they are very straight, like you have to know where you are. That's why you got the sign over there in German. It says a Mittelhof. It means this is a center yard. You have to remember that in the Austro-Hungarian army you got people from Poland, Czech Republic, Ukrainians, what else? Hungary. It was like a Tower of Babel, you know?
Yeah, it was 15, 18 different languages.
Yeah, of course. In Przemyśl, during the first and the second siege, you can hear 9 languages on the streets. You can read newspapers in 4 languages. In Polish, German, Hungarian, and Yiddish. So imagine that. It was hard to keep them in one line.
Especially for the commanders who had to at least
Yep.
have knowledge of all these languages.
Of course, and well, the commanders use only a German language.
So the men had to learn, what was it, 1,000
Yes.
words a year? Or
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
There was
yeah.
a rule for how many words they
Yep.
had to learn.
Yep.
I mean, Ordnung muss sein, yeah? I see shrapnel damage.
Well, we don't know that for sure. All of the walls are missing, as you could see.
These would have been wooden walls that were
No, they've been...
stone walls.
Yeah, they concrete, and mostly right here you got the concrete all around, but those walls would be made of bricks.
Really?
Yeah, and there would be only a small window inside.
These were the Kaserne, the barracks.
Yeah, but this part of the fort, on my left side, was used as a storage place, and place where soldiers could stay is for your right side,
Okay.
the casemates.
And let me guess, all the stones have over the years been removed by civilians to
Yeah,
rebuild their
yeah,
own
they
houses.
have a free way to take it.
Yes,
after a war.
yeah. But I mean, this does look pretty much like, this looks like shrapnel burst. Actually, this looks like direct fire, doesn't it? Well, it's weird.
That part, there would be a wall. You know why? Because that part is for officers,
Of course.
and that one is for soldiers.
You can't have officers crap.
Yeah, they don't sit on the one bench with you, you know what I mean?
So was this a fighting window?
No, it was only a window for taking light.
In France, I have seen an exceptional amount of forts where you actually have fighting positions in the toilets.
Well, the curious thing, if you would be looking for some treasures,
Yeah?
the best place for looking for it,
Yeah.
it's a toilet. Because when the soldiers run from the forts, everything that they got, you know, all the medallions or whatever, they throw to the toilet.
So did you guys excavate the toilets?
Every toilet in the fortress, it's completely checked. Everyone.
Did you find anything?
Yeah, we found some small pistols, some bells, and things like that.
You know, I would go through all shit for that too. I'm fine with that.
You'll dive in it.
You know what? It would not. Yes, I probably would.
Yeah. The main problem was the money.
Yes.
That's why that fort was rebuilt couple times. And as you can see here, we got steps, and they are pretty wide.
Yeah.
We don't need something like that in the fort. What for? You see, the Austro-Hungarians has figured out you can use those steps to carry the cannons up on the top of the fort.
So they actually ran the wheels up the stairs?
Yeah, that's why it's so wide. You know, you can use a line over there, and by the line, bring the cannon up.
So did they pull them up by horses, or?
No, they only use your hands and your muscles.
And that's why if it was a ramp, that would be too steep.
Yep.
So by steps, it would stop in every step.
Yeah, it has to be like that. You can go around, because that place would be used as a storage for food, you know, and for petrol or whatever they used in the forts.
Now they would have petrol,
Yeah.
in the fort. I know because the petrol originally, just before the siege, was left the fort and then came
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
What did they use petrol for? There must have been some generator for something.
They have a generators to create some electricity, you know, because they use those huge lamps to observe before the forts. No, the whole area before the forts.
Oh, and that played a whole different part in the battle, lighting up the battlefield.
The Russians hate it, you know, because as they say, the Austro-Hungarians shoot to them as to the wild ducks.
Yeah.
No, how it is. We can go around right now, and we gonna enter to the kitchen.
I'm guessing the green is just moss, not actual
Yeah,
color.
it is, yes.
So the walls were all white.
Yeah, you see, the building is over 100 years old, so...
Yeah. Plants take over.
Yeah. So that would be the kitchen. And here we got part of the original floor. The tails on the... This part will be original.
And this was two-tone...
Yeah,
color. Yes,
that's red and black, I think.
Yes.
They crossed the moat in the fort number 11 that is set before this one.
Yes.
You know, because this is a whole group of the forts. And that was during the first siege. That was the 7th September of October, sorry, 7 October 1914. You know, during the night, Russians has came. It was a very heavy rain during that night. That's why Russians has came through the moat, and they entered to the fort. And they've been fighting with their soldiers in the fort. And the commander of the fort, number 1, called 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿, he decided that they're gonna locked inside of the fort, and they phoned to the other forts, and by the phone they asked them for help. So the other forts start to shoot on the fort number 11. That's why they keep the other Russian sides off, and they decide that the Russians that came to the fort number 1, they will die in the battle or they will be captured as a prisoner.
This is a town with a lot of history. It must have been fun to grow up here as a kid.
Yeah, I remember when we've been running here and you hear voices, you thought it's someone's chasing you, but because you can hear the echo.
Yeah.
Why they use that, the echo in the forts?
Communication.
No, to hear what the soldiers been saying between them.
Oh.
Yeah, because maybe they've been, maybe there was some spy between them, or maybe they say something against the emperor. You know, it was easier to work for, you know.
It's hard to whisper in...
Yeah, it's hard to whisper because you can hear everything.
And that's ventilation?
Yeah, that's ventilation, yeah.
And then that would be lighting on the hook?
Yeah.
So the stove would have been somewhere
Right here.
Right here. And they'll be cooking on coal or wood
Yeah,
fire?
yeah, mostly they use coal. So this is one of the underground tunnels that goes to the moat. There was 3 of them in every fort. It goes to the 3 of the bunkers that been inside of the moat, and they've been protecting the moat. All of those tunnels here in this fort, they are blow up. So this one has ended right here.
Oh, that's where the cracks in the roof is
Yeah,
coming from.
yeah, exactly.
So would they go out to 𝐾𝐿 or?
Yeah, they go to 𝐸𝐾𝐿.
Huh. And this was when the Austrian-Hungarians blew it up themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still holding. It's not that thick. How thick is the...
A meter or something like that.
Yeah,
See?
It is pretty thick for a tunnel.
Yeah, and there is no iron,
No.
only concrete and stones.
Iron came later.
I think there's some water coming here. You can see the marks.
Yeah, water is the biggest enemy of any fortress, or anything left behind.
Okay, if you turn like here, here we got the elevator, and that was the ammunition elevator. Of course, there's no electricity in the forts.
Hand cranked.
Yeah.
So there was a wooden floor up there.
Yeah, the wooden floor, yeah. And you have to use your muscles to bring everything up.
Yep. So I'm guessing we were near powder magazine somewhere.
All of the magazines would be on that side, the opposite side.
The opposite, over there.
Yeah.
So this would be a caserne?
Yeah, for soldiers. It was here you see the part of the iron. That was a place where they could hang the key things, you know, like a backpack or whatever they got. And in those places like this one, they would use only a small stove that would be standing here to keep a heat during the winter.
The bunker stove.
Yeah, so it was quite cold, even during the summer, you know, and during the winter it was extremely cold inside.
So over there is the powder magazines.
Yep.
So you have to walk the powder around to get to the, and this was black powder.
Yeah, what you have to remember, all of the ammunition that has came to the fortress of Przemyśl was empty. Because Austro-Hungarians been so afraid of terrorists that they could destroy the ammunition before it came to the fortress, that the ammunition has came empty. And there would be, in every fort, there would be powder storage, you know, and they would take black powder, fill it, the ammunition with the black powder, and then bring it to the positions.
You would have gun cotton, you would have the shell casing,
Yep.
and then you would have the projectile.
Yep.
That was all assembled. Was that assembled down here or up there?
Down here.
That was assembled down here and then moved up there?
Yep,
Okay.
for positions. Main idea was to keep the black powder out from the soldiers, you know. Even if that building would blow up, you know, the soldiers been in the other building.
Yeah.
So no one would get harmed. But you have to remember that when they start to raise the fortress, a lot of spies have came to the city.
Yeah.
You know, because the Russians already knew that something is prepared, but they wanted to figure out what.
The Russians had the plans for the fortress though, didn't they?
Yeah, they steal the plans, you know, there was a couple spies working for them, and they steal the plans. Well, probably like most of the armies.
Yeah, actually you're right. So this was a blue. This is original color, isn't it?
Yeah, probably inside it was a blue, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you can see it right here.
yeah. Oh, that's pretty.
Because outside the buildings, during the winter, the building would be painted by white paint, no?
Oh, really? So they
Yeah.
actually changed the color?
Yeah, they changed the colors. You're gonna see it on the fort number 15 when we came there. And then when the weather has changed, you know, the summer would became, the white paint would be flushed out from the building, you know.
Yeah.
So that would be a natural thing to hide the forts.
That's very low. That's very farsighted.
Yeah. It was the ammunition storage. All of the magazines we got right here.
So for
And
now,
you see there's no roof on the ceiling. That's because you cannot use the open fire here.
what was this? That's ventilation?
Yeah.
That runs in the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen similar in France of old forts
Yeah.
to that, and that's where the light would be. The little lamp would be
Yeah,
in
probably,
there
yeah.
with a glass plate. Yeah. So are the numbers original?
Yeah, the numbers are original.
And here's for another one. So there was a little hatch. There'll be a glass plate. There'll be also okay. There'll be a glass plate here.
Probably,
light will be
yeah.
Here, and then they'll light it from here. This is the powder. Wait a minute. This is the powder magazine we're in.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be a glass plate, and then they'll light it from there.
Could be like that, yes.
Yeah. And probably there might even be a little ventilation hole for the candle.
Yeah, so the smoke goes up.
Yeah. So did the men write on the walls? Was there any graffiti or anything like that?
I believe so.
Soldiers usually do that. I don't know if the Austro-Hungarians will let them. The French were very big on writing pictures and paintings and graffiti on the walls of the forts.
I haven't seen something like that here in Przemyśl.
That's interesting. The Prussians were big on it. I can see why the Austrians, they wouldn't allow such a thing. That would be frivolous.
I think we can go right here. We got a second
Ammunition lift?
yeah, ammunition lift.
Is that higher up than the other?
Yeah, it goes to the second floor.
And there's a hook for a lamp?
Yeah.
This is the walkway behind the munition storage.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is the window that we saw. Right here.
Yep. That's where you light it. Some things never change.
That's the main tunnel
Yep.
that goes to the moat.
So this is the center of the fort.
The center of the fort, yeah. And here we got,
Munition lifts on both sides.
and
Oh,
here
yeah,
you
of
got this huge part that was elevator for cannons.
Oh, you actually had an elevator lift?
Yeah.
A cannon lift?
Right here.
Wow. So you had two stores. You have two on top, you have two upper levels.
Yeah.
So you had that one and then you had that one there.
The last one is on the top of the fort. We're gonna go there in a minute.
There's a mark in the stairs all the way
Yeah,
on the side.
and you see, take a look at here. This is the system that was used to block the steps. It actually was used in medieval times, at the very beginning, because you just cut some trees and put them to the holes and build a wall.
Yep.
Right here.
And they used that system all the way up to World War II.
Yeah. So here we are on the second floor. You probably remember this room with that window, the square one.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we seen it from the central yard.
So what was in here?
That was only used for also for soldiers. You see those iron bars on the right side?
For the clothing and...
Yeah, for clothes and things like that.
So how would they bring the elevator up and down? Did they use electricity, horses, or...
No electricity. There was only a line, and you have to use your muscles.
For the cannons?
Even for the cannons, yeah.
Was there a big wheel or something?
Yeah. There was a whole system of wheels, and you only can count on yourself. After the First War, people could came here to the forts and take whatever they want, because the government let them to use the elements of the forts, for themselves.
Yeah. So they would separate the detonators from the shells. They would have to be set, so there would have to be that little...
Yeah, they set the time on the detonators.
Yeah. Was that up here or was that down?
No, they set up before the cannons.
Yeah. They were almost active.
The problem on the Russian side was that the cannons that they bring with them for the siege of the fortress being too weak. Like those cannons that they used, that been field cannons. And they couldn't use those cannons to break through the fortress.
So here's the side to this tower we were just in, where you could break up all the windows. And look at this artillery position. This was bricked in. Access down to the munition store there.
The moat was defended by 3 bunkers, the casemates.
Yeah.
And what you have to remember, If they would jump there, there's no way out from it.
No, they'll be shot by flanking fire from both
That's
sides.
it, yep. We are on the outer ring. It's 45 kilometers long, but what you have to remember, before the outer ring, the Austro-Hungarians have spread 100 kilometers of barbed wire. They prepared the minefields, they dig the holes, fill them with water, they cut some part of the forests, and they burn couple villages, you know, just to clean the place before the Russians gonna
Feel
came.
the fire.
Yep.
Were they actually planning landmines?
On some parts of the fortress. There was a situation, the fort number 16, on the first siege when the Russians attacked this fort, and they've been captured as prisoners, and the Austro-Hungarians tell them to came to the Austro-Hungarian positions, but they forget that the Russians have to cross through the minefield, and all of those Russians been dead. You know, the main idea for a fortress was to keep the Russian troops here, as many as they can. So the Russian army wouldn't go further. They have to spend the time for the siege here in Przemyśl. It took them 5 months during the second siege. And that was the main idea of the fortress.
Yeah, because if the Russians have come through here successfully on the first siege, they could literally have rolled up.
They have open
line.
way to Hungary.
Yeah, the fortress did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yeah,
It slowed them down for the reserve army to refit and come back.
Yeah, actually the fortress was called the gate to the Hungary. And that was a truth. You know, if the Russians would break through the fortress, they have open road to the Hungary.
What I was impressed with here is that the guy who built the fortress designer, the one who designed this, he stayed here during the siege.
Yeah, he stayed here. His name was Daniel von Salisolio, and well, first of all, he was an architect, but he was also a musician. He played on a cello, and during the first and second siege, he organized the concerts for civilians in the city center, so they didn't think about the war for a couple minutes during the day.
So was he captured after the second siege?
Yep. He was a prisoner for a couple months in Russia. You see that wall over there?
Yeah.
On the right side. That how would be looking like in every part of this building. No. That entrance is made of bricks.
Oh yes.
And those brick walls will be in every part of these buildings. No.
So they'll roll from here out on the plateau here, up and down to their positions.
Yes.
That was the top of the hoist.
Yeah. There was also a part of the wooden floor that you can go from one side to the other of the building.
Oh, so you could get over here.
Yeah. And you remember this room is beneath us with this square window.
Yeah, in the round window.
You know, quite often people ask me, how can you get inside this room? Yeah, you see, it's a tricky thing. Right there on the right side. The steps are over there on the right side, and it goes down beneath us. So you would have to jump on that side of the building. If there will be, of course, a wooden floor, you would just cross through it and enter through by the steps down.
Yeah, I mean...
I was trying to solve that problem for a couple of years, you know, because I didn't have the plans of the building.
Did you get the plans?
Yeah, I get the plans, and I have a friend of mine, and he made a model of this fort in third dimension. So he showed me that, you know, and I just walked through the whole of the building, and I could see everything, you know. What you have to remember, 128,000 soldiers in the fortress. So, you know, the military had huge money to feed them, you know, feed the horses. And what they did, they burned, before they give up to the Russians, they burned the money, but the coins have stayed. And we know that they've been trying to save them. They used planes, but one plane has left the Russian positions, and the second plane was broken, and it's somewhere here. It was hidden here. And the people are still looking for it. As we are laughing, it's a golden plate, you know.
I mean, it's not unrealistic. I mean,
no, it's not.
From the Roman time, if
Even,
there's a fortress or a castle,
you can still find the money of that.
Of course, especially if it was a fortress or a castle that was taken by force.
Of course.
They would have dug something in.
And you know how this legend has started, the legend about the treasure of the fortress?
Oh.
By a gossip.
Of course.
There was an Austro-Hungarian officer, his name was Molnar, Major Molnar, and he was captured as a prisoner, and he died in Russia. He didn't survive the Russian winter. Before he died, he said to some of his friends that he hid something in the fortress. But he never said what and what he hid. And people start to figure out what he could hide. The money, probably, you know. And they've been looking for this Molnar treasure for years. We actually have found the treasure of Molnar in 1960s. You know, we've been making the renovation of one of the buildings in the city center. During the time when it was a siege of a fortress, that building was used as a hotel for Austro-Hungarian officers. And beneath the wooden floor, we have found the documentation of the fortress. Molnar was supposed to burn all of the documents, but he broke the regulation and he hid them beneath the floor. So that was his treasure.
That really is the treasure.
Yeah, for us, yes. But not for the people that are looking for a gold or something like that.
This is a brilliant point to show you just how large Fortress Przemyśl actually was. The forts on these outlying mountains, down there is the city center, and to the same distance on the other side are more forts. So this was not just a small affair.
This is the fort number 15, called Borek. Borek in Poland, it's a small forest. And you're gonna see this is the old type of a fort. Take a look at the main gate.
Okay.
There would be a place prepared for a shelter, prepared for a soldier, right on the right side.
So this is literally just a door.
Yep, that would be a metal shelter. So you see,
Little guard post.
yeah, a guard could just hide
So-
here.
So this was a metal.
Yeah, yeah. The metal gate
Metal gate.
right here.
There's a dude in here. In a little guard shack. There's a little guard shack here. And he would be see and shoot through here.
And if you take a look at the building, there's not too much concrete in it.
Well, I see a lot of red
See,
brick.
this is the old part, well, the old school, as we say.
Yes.
And take a look at those white marks on the wall. You see, this is the old paint, as I was telling you. They paint
That
the
was the-
bricks on the white
That's
during
what
the
that
winter.
was.
Yeah. And then the rain would flush it down when the summer would start.
I mean, like right now,
Yep.
when the summer is starting in June.
And of course, as we've been talking about the situation of the fort number 16, when it was attacked, number 11, sorry, when it was attacked by Russians.
Yeah.
You know, when all of the soldiers has locked inside of the fort.
Was this a similar design to 1-1?
As same, almost. And take a look at the windows. You see?
With the steel shutters.
Yep. You can close inside and just wait for help.
So how thick is the roof? I guess thick enough.
Half of
to-
a meter or something like that. Maybe a meter.
I mean, thick enough, and then the dirt on top. So thick enough to withstand artillery.
The new artillery that they used at the beginning of the First War would go through this roof.
Yeah, that's kind
And
of.
the Austro-Hungarians knew about it. That's why, to tell you the truth, when the fortress was finished at the very beginning of the First World War, it was too old to protect them.
Small firing, you could actually
Yeah.
shoot out of it.
Yep.
So after the fort has been overrun and relieved and was being shelled by everyone, Fort 11, then the Russians, Hungarians, relief was all be banging on the door like this
Yeah.
to get in.
Yep.
In Fort 15, there were only upgrades constructed on the left side. One with 2 encased Minimalschallkanonen and one with 2 Panzerdomes with 8 cm cannon.
And here you're gonna see how they changed the forts, even before, just shortly before the First War, because before the first siege has started, you know, that is the main building, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But here we would have the second building with 2 machine guns right here. So they would shoot directly on that field, on the eastern part.
Oh, I see something now. So this, of course, this was destroyed in the fighting.
Yep.
I know. I see a mount for a cannon or a Maxim. It was a cannon.
Yeah,
Was that
Maxim. You see, here you could set the shooting range.
Yep.
Right here. They use the water to cool down the cannons. And outside the building, this is very interesting. Outside the building, before the top of it, there would be a wooden bench for soldiers that would stand on it and shoot behind the building, you know, for the soldiers Russian soldiers that came here.
So on top of the bunker, you had an open rampart.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And the observation dome that you saw, this is of course a replica. We got it right here.
Well,
After the First War, the government decided to take all of the steel elements from the forts, to melt them and use somewhere again. That's why we don't have too much of those things here in the fortress. Those are the elements of the observation dome. And they've been made by the company. You may not notice it exists still today. They're making cars. It's a Skoda company.
Skoda-werke.
Yeah, from the Czech Republic.
oh, Skoda-werke make great stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and what you have to remember, this whole dome would be 5,000 kilograms heavy, and there is no electricity in the forts. If you want to move that baby around, you have to use your muscles. Those stones been around the dome to avoid the shaking and everything.
So this was not built into a casemate. This was
No,
actually
no.
almost sitting on the ground.
That actually the domes, those are the elements that been created shortly before the first siege of the fortress. That's why the Austro-Hungarians has rebuilt some forts, and two of the domes been right there. There would be a special building where they've been hitting the cannons inside of the domes.
This is the shroud. This is the bottom, and then this was, of course, part of the. What happened to this thing?
It was blow up. That's why it's completely destroyed.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So this is.
That would be the top.
Oh, see how thick that is. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see there would be observation.
Oh, that's what
right
that.
here,
Oh,
yeah.
that. Oh, real. Oh, that's the opposite. Oh, that's the port right there.
Yep.
Oh,
That was an observation dome.
that's where the observation
Yeah.
was. Cracked like an egg.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't start hardening the steel for World War I like they did for World War II domes. When the Germans they started dismantling World War I forts in Belgium for World War
For
II,
scrap, yeah.
they couldn't just reuse the same domes. They had to melt it.
Well, here in Przemyśl, Russian used the Polish domes that they took from the other bunkers when they built the Molotov line.
They did.
Yeah. You see, that would be the building that was raised after the fort was built. And that building was prepared for two of those cannon domes.
Right.
So one you have on the left and the second one on the right side. If you take a look in the middle, beneath the steps you got the storage place. That's good for them. Now for ammunition.
Uh-huh.
And here you get steps that would lead you directly on the left and on the right side to the domes.
Yep.
And if you take a look inside, there's not too much space over there, so there would be only one soldier inside of the dome
Yeah.
that would operate the tower, and the second one would be right here and just bring in the ammunition for him.
So it would. This is where the shroud would sit on this
Yep.
shelf. So it really wouldn't stick up much higher than we're standing.
He doesn't have to.
No.
And we have observation dome right there. We're gonna go there in a minute.
Ah.
Yeah,
be
and
able to turn it.
there was only one situation on the fort number 13 when the Russians has hit that kind of a dome. They didn't break it, but the dome has swing it around for 3 times, something like that. And I believe that soldier that was sitting inside had a wet paint.
If he didn't die from the concussion,
No, he didn't die. But imagine it would be like putting your head to the bell.
Yeah.
And someone hit on it by the hammer.
Yeah.
Probably. It was created by a Skoda, and here we got Skoda mark, Skoda Pilsner 1891. Why it was created by Skoda? It was cheaper because there was a second company in Germany, but but the Skoda was cheaper. That's why they choose this one.
I'm a big fan of Skoda. Is it on its original? So all the cement have been shot away. So that's
yeah, probably, yeah.
And then that would turn?
That would turn. We're gonna see inside in a minute. The steps doesn't exist because they've been also made of iron, so they cut off the steps.
Iron steps?
Yeah, but there would be. This is the observation dome, so there would be one guy sitting inside and look on the field.
This is a very different dome than. This is bigger than the Prussian domes in in the West. Yeah.
Okay. Here we are inside. Here we got the entrance to the observation dome.
I see what you mean with the ladder.
Yeah, the steps doesn't exist. You see, they've been right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been cut off. And you go up to the observation dome right there.
Yeah, no kidding. That is a very different access.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm actually seen an observation dome with a ladder like this. This is probably much more comfortable than what I've seen everywhere else, where people crawl up.
That would be the main shelter for the soldiers if the fort would be attacked by Russians. They could hide here.
This is it?
Yep. You can see there's an iron ceiling.
Yes, I do. That's is this part of the original, or was this an add-on with the domes?
No, that was the original.
This was the original?
Yeah, that was the original.
With the steel reinforcement?
Yeah.
From, what was it built, 1880?
1886.
86.
If they would break through the fort number 11, that was a chance that they could break through the fortress, to the main ring.
Yeah.
But they didn't use this chance in 100%.
You think they were too occupied trying to actually get inside and take the fort instead of moving on? So they boxed everybody up inside, move on. The artillery couldn't fire anymore, so they could just have moved.
Maybe they've been just out of luck.
A lot of times that's a real thing.
Yeah, that's, we may laugh about it, but quite often it's just a small problem, but it's a problem.
Fort 15 is quite similar to Fort 1, and there is an effort in town to restore and preserve the old forts, rebuilding some of their parts, and the destroyed fighting positions. And here they even rebuilt the Swallow's Tail in Fort 𝐶𝐨𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿. I will never tire of this town. I wonder if I will ever see everything here, but I will try. And I can only implore you to visit if you ever have a chance. And if you can't, I will try to show you what is here now. Consider subscribing to my channel, liking, follows, and maybe even join me on Patreon to help out. I am just a guy, a historian, traveling around all these historic places in Europe on my own dime, trying to bring them to you.